by me. There's a lot more people than I'm used to. Yeah.
She's probably gonna go there. Yeah.
He's here.
Yeah. That's great.
Well, the pool steps off. Yeah, it was my decision.
So we're gonna shuffle things, okay.
Usual. You're ready.
All right, everybody, I'm gonna bring the meeting to order. If you'll please stand. And we'll start with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. John?
Take a moment of silence for our first responders, police, ambulance and fire, and for our public works guys who I think are still out in the road plowing snow. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Please have a seat. I'm gonna call the meeting to order Tuesday, January 16th. Just a couple of housekeeping items. The meeting is being recorded via Zoom, and a recording will be uploaded later to the township's YouTube channel for viewing. The board met in executive session prior to this meeting to discuss personnel matters. We're going to skip over the police chief's report this evening. We're gonna go quickly to Goshen Fire, and then we're going to shuffle a couple things around so that we can have our hearing and go from there. So Grant, if you would come on up, please. Thanks for coming tonight.
Thanks, Michelle.
Busy day today.
Actually, not bad.
Glad to hear
I
it.
think people stayed home, so. it was
Good.
good. So, excuse me, for the month of December, another busy month for us. We had 65 fire calls, 37 fire police calls, and 426 EMS calls. There were 18 fire calls in East Goshen, 9 fire police responses in East Goshen, and 202 EMS calls in East Goshen. It was a fairly busy month for serious incidents. Went to a building fire on Sugartown Road in Willistown. We had 2 auto accidents with entrapment on the same day, one in Westtown, one in East Goshen on Waterview Road. We assisted Westchester with the apartment fire, 51 Patton Alley on the 26th of December. And then assisted West Whiteland on Denby Terrace with a building fire on the 28th. Fundraising activities, we wrapped up our 15-week club raffle in December. That was a success for us. And then our 2024 EMS subscription and capital drive and our 2024 business contribution drives are under. And as I understand it, we're seeing good returns on those.
Good returns on that. Great.
We send out a reminder letter for the subscription drive the 1st of February. So at the February meeting, I should be able to give you a pretty good number of where.
That's
we are.
great. Just so everybody on the board knows, I did send an email to Grant earlier today to ask for some statistics and numbers based on the annual report. He's going to provide information to us via email sometime in the next month. So I asked for a number of things, and so it's something that we're going to start working on with you.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
I'd like to pile on and if I can and just ask for a breakdown of the BLS versus fire costs.
Oh, yeah,
If we can do that per call, that'd just give us a good idea
it's a
too.
great idea.
I also had a question about for the false alarm calls, are these per the police dispatch or is this internal to the fire?
That's our internal record keeping
Okay,
for the calls we respond to.
okay. Yeah, I had a discussion with Dwayne just to talk about how many false calls there are versus what we're actually fining people for to
Right.
try and see what kind of things we could do to address that.
Yeah, we had a jump in calls in East Goshen in 2023.
Yeah.
I know about 37 of those calls were between Bellingham and Wellington for automatic alarms. I know Dwayne was working with them pretty much every day trying to get it under control. But I
Yeah.
think just those 2 facilities really surged our numbers.
Yeah, and I did talk to
All for
Dwayne.
the
And
year,
we've kind of gone through a little turnover in that department, so we're trying to catch up, and I did promise Tom, and I'll promise you too, we're gonna give you guys an update and see if we can
Okay,
collect some more on those false alarms that should
that'd be
be
great.
collected.
Every little
And
bit
then we
helps.
won't wait till December. We'll cut you a check earlier.
Okay.
Okay.
Just for the year, East Goshen for fire calls, 283 fire calls. Obviously, the primary source of that is automatic alarms. But that's the same with every township we respond to. EMS calls was 2,204. And fire police, were 120 fire police responses. So,
Great.
happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Does anybody have any questions for Grant?
Yeah, Madam Chair, one quick question. Grant, are you able to provide the next meeting? So the 15-week raffle, how did it compare to last year's
Yeah.
fundraising efforts? And then like, or
Yeah.
just year over year, that'd be helpful.
Sure.
Thank you.
It was, off the top of my head, it was on par with the prior year. During COVID, we had a huge year because we couldn't do other kinds of fundraising. And I think people really
Stepped up.
Stepped up.
Yeah.
So it dropped a bit, but we're still at pre-COVID levels. So
Okay.
that's good. But
Thank
I'll get you
Yeah, just
that.
the subscription drive and also the 15-week.
Sure.
Please, thank
Oh,
you.
and the other thing is for February, if you could also have your fundraiser schedule for the spring, that'd be
Yes.
great. Thank you very much.
And granted, when you guys look at fundraising dollars versus contributions and things like that, that pooled amount of money year over year. From what we talked about before, it seems like it never really goes up a ton. It's kind of goes between buckets, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
if you increase one, then the other one kind of goes down. So people are either donating this way or that way, but the total pool of money is
Right.
not necessarily growing.
Yeah, I think there's a finite amount of money that people are willing or are able to give
Able to,
us.
Sure.
And it does sort of bounce between the different ones. The
Plateau
fair is the
at
one,
a-
if we get good weather and, 6 strong nights, the fair is the one we really can lean into. The flower sale, the raffles, those kinds of things are pretty steady year over year.
Mhm. Okay.
And I just to comment, the report update looks good.
Okay,
I think it's great.
thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Grant.
Thanks.
Um,
Madam Chair,
thank
the
you.
Malvern Fire Company and Good Fellowship reports for December 2023 are in there. If anybody wants to read that at their leisure, I do have the 2023 annual report in there for Malvern Fire Company. Good Fellowship didn't get it to me in time, but I do
Okay.
have it, so it'll be in the next meeting.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, then we're going to move along to the public hearing. Mark, are you going to take over from here?
Will,
Excellent, thanks.
we're gonna let the applicant get ready, but
Can you use the microphone that's next to you? Oh, there you go. Thank you. Jess will need that for when.
hopefully everyone can hear me.
Yeah, we'll do that for doing the minutes.
This is the continued hearing for the application of Timber Mill LLC. This is a conditional use application. I'm gonna read out the specific provisions of the zoning ordinance which the applicant has applied for conditional use approval under. That's section 240-38.5A2C. Section 240-38.5C and section 240-38.5D. The property is located at 301 Reservoir Road. The applicant is seeking approval to allow for the residential conversion of a designated historic resource into a single-family dwelling unit. To permit additionally, approval to permit additional development of the property on which a historic resource is located. And finally, to permit the property on which a historic resource is located to be subdivided for additional development. I did go over some hearing exhibits just to confirm the hearing was advertised for December 5th, 2023. We opened the hearing that night. We continued it on the record to tonight, January 16th, 2024. I'm going to go over the hearing exhibits one more time. Exhibit B1 is the application. Exhibit B2 is the public notice of the hearing, which was originally scheduled for December 5th. Exhibit B3 is the proof of publication of that public notice in the Daily Local News. Exhibit B4 is the zoning officer letter sent to all properties within 1,000 feet of the applicant's property. Exhibit B5 is the proof of posting of the property by the zoning officer. B6 is a December 1st, 2023 memorandum from the East Goshen Township Planning Commission. B7 is a November 17th, 2023 Chester County Planning Commission subdivision review letter. And Exhibit B8 is a November 17th, 2023 email memorandum from the East Goshen Township Conservancy Board. With that, given the fact that we have a hearing, individuals have the ability to request what's called party status to the application. You don't have to be a party to ask questions or make statements to the board. Party status is reserved for individuals that own property that's directly adjacent to or in the vicinity of the applicant's property, where such property would be impacted by that development. So with that being said, would anyone like to request party status to this application? So let the record reflect that that no individual has requested party status.
We just were checking Zoom.
Okay. And no one, okay. With that, I would turn it over to the applicant's counsel, Mr. Schubert.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Madam Chair, may it please the board. Good evening. My name is Christopher Schubert. I'm the attorney here tonight on behalf of the applicant. I'm with the law firm of Rieger, Rizzo, and Darnell of Westchester. And I do have some exhibit packets to hand out. And I have 3 witnesses here tonight who will be testifying in support of the application. I also handed Mr. Davis an electronic copy, so hopefully that all works. And if anybody is back looking at this on Zoom, they'll be able to see this on Zoom as well. So as indicated, this is a property that is located at 301 Reservoir Road.
Excuse me, we need to hear you in the
Oh,
microphone.
okay.
I'm sorry.
I'll sit down
Thank
and
you.
talk then. Make it easier for myself as well. So this is a property located at 301 Reservoir Road, as Mark had indicated. It's a property zoned R2, and it's just under 7 acres in size. And presently, there's been identified some historic resources on the property. They are unfortunately in somewhat of a state of disrepair, but what the owner of the property, which is Timber Mill LLC, and Mike Zappatelli, who's here tonight to testify, what his vision is to move forward with a 5-lot subdivision of that property. We have the civil engineer, Vic Kelly, who testified that in doing a lot line layout, that the property would support 5 residential lots. The proposal is an adaptive reuse of the one building which is on the property, which is an old barn. That would be converted into a single-family residential use. There is also an existing house and a tenant house on the property, and that would be set forth on a separate lot. And then there would be 3 additional residential lots that would be created as a result. And I also have Jane Dorchester, who's here tonight, who is the historic consultant who the applicant has contacted and worked with. And she's done a report, and that report has been reviewed by township staff as well. So that's available tonight to go over. So the first witness I'd like to call this evening would be Mike Zappatelli.
Yes. Michael Zappatelli, Z-A-P-P-I-T-E-L-L-I. Yep.
Mr. Zappatelli, I've put before you applicant's exhibits, and the applicant here tonight is Timber Mill LLC, is that correct?
Correct.
What's your association with that company?
I'm the owner, sole owner of the company.
And does that company own the property which is the subject of tonight's application at 301 Reservoir Road?
Correct.
And that's also identified as parcel 53 4P 128 on the Chester County tax map.
Correct.
Now I put before you applicant's exhibit A2. Is that a copy of the deed by which Timber Mill took ownership of the property?
Correct.
And what brings us before the Board of Supervisors tonight, just very briefly?
To go for conditional use to subdivide the property into a 5-lot subdivision. Renovate and rehab the existing farmhouse and the tenant property and turn the existing barn that was presently, I believe, rebuilt in 97, 94, somewhere in that time frame, into a single family residence. And then 3 additional new homes on the property.
Now, let me show you what's been marked as applicant's exhibit A3. This is entitled Chesco Views Photo of the Subject Property. I take it that you're familiar with the property?
Yes.
And now, utilizing that exhibit, could you briefly describe the property to the board?
Yes. As you go up the existing driveway off Reservoir Road, you will pass the barn on your left first. And as you keep going up around the bend, you will see the farmhouse and the existing tenant cottage. If you go up the driveway, the property to your right there will be the new construction homes.
Okay. And what's the general condition of the house and the barn presently?
The barn, the roof you can see daylight through, so we're currently taking water through the roof. It is cleaned out. The farmhouse is cleaned out. It was, I don't know how much detail to go into here, but a very bad order situation along with the tenant house, which is now cleaned out. And we're trying to put it back to the 1700s, condition there to rehab it.
Now, you have some photographs of the property, I think, and we've marked those collectively as A4. If you can turn to that exhibit, and the first page of that exhibit, what are we looking at there?
So you're looking at the rear of the farmhouse. The rear of the property, the condition it was when I purchased the property. I believe this was probably mid-summertime, August timeframe. The windows, I'm a hands-on builder also, so the windows in the property were shot. We're taking, again, water through windows in these storms. And I've been working closely with the township to replace these windows and get everything watertight, closed in, and keep this structure, in the condition that it needs to be for historic preservation.
And let's take a look at the second picture in that.
So the second picture is the side of the barn that you would see pulling up the driveway on your left-hand side. What I would call lean-to is off to the far left of the photo, basically storing refuse / leftover items there. Again, the roof to both the lean-to and the barn, you can see daylight through. It's a cedar shake roof. The barn is all wood. We're not currently moving anything other than cleaning out the barn at this time until we move forward here, but everything there is as it sits.
All right, now let's take a look at the third picture.
Tenant house is exactly how it sits right now. If you had the opportunity to walk the property or walk inside the house, you would not be able to move. It was floor to ceiling with debris.
And then the final picture in that series, what are we looking at here? And the wall.
This is downhill from, as you pull up to the driveway, downhill to the right. It's basically, this is time of season where it kind of died off, trees died off, but this is basically just a stone wall there that we will do our best to work around and reclaim there.
Now, Mr. Zapatelli, as the principal of the company, I take it that you have the authority to agree to any reasonable conditions that the Board of Supervisors might see fit, should they grant this application,
Yes.
is that correct?
Yep.
And do you believe that what you're proposing to do with the property would be in keeping with the surrounding area?
Absolutely.
You also believe that the proposal is in keeping with the township ordinances pertaining to adaptive reuse of historic resources?
Yes.
And what specifically is proposed as an adaptive resource for one of those historic elements, namely the barn?
So the barn, we're gonna keep the entire structure there. We're, keep within, all the timber, everything stays in place. We're going back with either a cedar shake or a metal roof to, keep on top of that. We'll stay with the, I'll say composite, but not a wood exterior, it'll be composite, so it's maintenance free, but within kind. Same thing with the, stone walls. We're gonna repoint and redo all this, stone walls. And keep that whole little outdoor area there as a quote unquote outdoor living space. So it really will turn and flow into a single family property there.
Now, in your opinion, do you believe that with the approval of the adaptive reuse for the barn, as well as the further development, the subdivision that's proposed for 5 lots, would be necessary to preserve the historic resources that are on that property?
To an extent, I mean, there's a couple stone walls that are almost, I would say, buried on the property. The stone walls that I'd be concerned about are around the barn, and they're actually with weather. I mean, anybody can drive by there. With weather, they are deteriorating as we speak. But the ones that are in the way of a driveway or a road are actually buried into the ground. You can barely tell they're there without surveying.
And what's the proposal with those? Well, first off, those stone walls were identified as historic resources as well. What's proposed with those stone walls in those sections?
We'll mitigate as needed and do our best that we can to save them, but it's up to the development.
Okay, and you have an engineer here tonight
Yes,
to talk more about
correct.
that detail? Okay. And I had also made mention that you also consulted with an historic preservation consultant, is that correct?
Yes, we have.
And that's Ms. Jane Dorchester,
Mrs. Dorchester,
and
yes,
she's here tonight?
correct.
That's all the questions I have of Mr. Zapatelli. I don't know if the board has any questions.
Sorry. Mr. Zapatelli, is this your first project or have you done other projects of this nature?
No, I'm a resident of township for 30+ years. My father's been building for 50 years. And in this township, I've done multiple projects over the past 20 years within my own company. It's not, I've built my own house across the street here. This is not the first project in the township. It's just not under a different LLC.
I understand. Not your first rodeo then.
Yes.
Dwayne, what is it, 6.8 acres here? Is that adequate for our zoning? Well, that's a straight answer. Thank you. What are you gonna do? Are you gonna use the driveway? Are you gonna make a private driveway or is it gonna be a public way
Cul-de-sac street.
belonging to the township or to the homeowners association?
I think that's ultimately to be decided, but at this point, there is a land development application that's pending. It is proposed as a cul-de-sac that the lots would feed off of. If the township would want dedication of that, I'm sure that could work, although I think what is proposed with this development is an HOA. And if it was be maintained as private, it would be taken over by the HOA and maintained by the HOA.
I understand. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions? I wanted to ask a couple of questions real quick. So to be clear, you're not proposing to build 5 new houses. You're proposing only to restore the two dwellings that are there and then you're also talking about building from ground up 3 new properties. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And what happens if you come across something that's unexpected as far as artifact is concerned? What are you going to do with those things? If you come across either more walls or,
It goes back to I would lean back to Mrs. Dorchester and then
okay,
feed off the township there.
okay. I don't have any other questions at this time. Cody, Barbara, Peter. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Right. Question?
Mr. Keller?
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Dave.
I just had a question. Are these gonna be on public sewer or are they gonna be on private?
Oh, thanks for
Public sewer
asking.
and public
Thank you.
water.
Thanks.
Public.
Yep.
Thank you. Forgot to ask that question. I had it on here too. I did, look, see.
I have the rendered plans.
Okay.
Mr. Kelly, if you could be sworn.
Victor Kelly Jr.
Now, Mr. Kelly, what do you do for a living, sir?
I am a civil engineer.
And do you have your own company?
I do.
And you're licensed with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania?
Yes, I am.
And could you describe to the board some of your experience with regard to land development projects?
Sure. I went to Penn State. I graduated in 1985 and I've been doing land development ever since. I got my license in 1991 and started Commonwealth Engineers in 1996.
And have you appeared before this township and worked as a civil engineer on other projects within this township?
Yes, we've done other projects here, most recently for Jim Brandolini right down Strasburg Road.
Okay. And I show you your CV,
Yes.
which is applicant's exhibit A5. Is that your current CV?
It is?
Does the board have any questions about Mr. Kelly's qualifications? Okay, thank you.
You proffering him as an expert in
I
civil
am.
engineering?
I am, thank you.
Yeah, I would suggest that we allow him to testify as an expert and recognize him as such.
Okay.
Mr. Thompson.
No questions?
Mr. Kelly, what has been your role with regard to this particular conditional use application?
We have been preparing the plans and the applications for Timber Mill LLC.
Now, I take it you've been out to the property
I have,
and you've walked the property and you're also familiar with the surrounding area.
I am.
So what's generally involved with this conditional use application?
What's involved for the conditional use is specifically the complying with the zoning under the R2 district for subdivision on any property that has any historic structures.
And I take it that you've, in your preparation of the conditional use application, being involved with the land development, that you're familiar with the governing ordinances of the township,
I am,
but that also include the comprehensive plan?
yes.
And have you been guided by any input from any township staff with regard to this application?
We have presented the sketch plan to the planning commission and received favorable feedback from them. We've also met with township staff to go over some things early on, township engineer to go over some just basic guidelines and have incorporated that as much as we can.
Now, based upon your involvement with the application and your review and knowledge of the governing ordinances and also the input from the township with regard to this application, do you have an opinion as to whether the submissions would be compliant with the conditional use standards that are required with this particular type of application?
Yes,
And let's go through the details of the conditional use application and what was submitted. First off, the property is in the R2 zoning district, is that right?
correct.
And if you could, utilizing the existing plan, which is A6, describe to the board the significant notable features of the property.
Well, I think Mike kind of hit on it when he talked about it. This property is just south of the Cooper's Circle, which is a residential development. I think that was developed back in the 60s or 70s. This is a 6.9 acre parcel. And to the south is an open space area, I believe owned by the township. It does have public sewer running through it and there's public water a little farther down Reservoir Road. So those are the surrounding properties.
Okay. And we're here because there are historic resources on the property, and Mr. Zapatelli talked about the barn, the house, and the tenant house. Is that right?
Correct.
And you also work with Ms. Dorchester with regard to this application?
Yes.
Now, the first section of the code that requires the conditional use of the 240-38.5A2C, which deals with a residential conversion of a structure that's designated as an historic resource. What part of the project is involved under that code provision?
Well, it's not specifically clear which structures, whether it's the house, the barn and all, but we've being, cautious in what we wanted. We assumed that they all were. So the barn is being converted from just a typical accessory use into a residential use.
And one of the requirements is that it should contain not less than 800 square feet. So is it larger than 800 square feet?
Yes,
And the proposal is to convert it to a single family residential use, correct?
correct.
And what about with regard to the house?
The house is, it was in a residential use with an apartment above the garage, but that's going to be just converted to a single family.
All right, and the tenant house, what's proposed with that?
That will just be used in compliance with zoning. There was discussion back with the planning commission that it could possibly be an in-law suite. We don't know if that was going to work with zoning, but in discussing it with Mike, it's going to be just a guest house, a pool house, something like that, that is in compliance with the zoning unless the need or somebody comes along and wants to make it an office or an in-law suite that doesn't comply. They'd have to go through any zoning relief that would be needed for that use.
But the main issue is that would be preserved, correct?
Correct.
And another historic resource, and we'll hear more from Ms. Dorchester about that, but it was with regard to various walls that are on the property. Can you generally describe where those walls are located and whether they would in any way be impacted by the development?
The walls are identified on the plan and they are south of the house and just to the right of the driveway coming in. As was shown in the picture earlier, some are in really bad shape. They're essentially just piles of rock on the ground. The one wall that is in good shape is going to be at the end of the cul-de-sac and we're going to try to preserve that. That's about 4 feet and that's a mortar joint and everything. So that is going to be preserved as best we can. We may need to take the one end out for the driveway. We're going to move the driveway to the existing house to the east side of the property.
And with regard to the section of the wall that is being taken out, is anything planned with regard to the actual stones that are part of that wall?
Yeah, we're going to try to reuse those and essentially turn that wall upslope along the driveway to keep it in character.
Now, the next section of the code, 240-38.5C, deals with proposed additional development of historic resources consistent with the regulations of the zoning district for adaptive reuse. Do you have a rendered plan that you can show at the board? And I think that's marked as applicant's exhibit A7.
We do have A7.
Now, utilizing this plan, can you again point out the notable features of what's proposed by way of the development?
All right, so the driveway now is right adjacent to the property to the northwest, and the site distance to the right is not very good, getting in and out of that driveway onto Reservoir. So the intent is to move the cul-de-sac, is about a 450-foot long cul-de-sac, to the south end there, where we have better site distance and better access to the site, and provide access. There's zoning requirements for 60 feet of frontage for each of the units. So we've got the first unit on the left is a proposed residential building that's going to be ground up. The second is the barn. On the left is the barn. The third is the existing historic house. And like I said, we're moving the driveway to the right side or east side of the house there. The garage is actually on that end of the building, so it seems to make more sense and work out better that way. And then the two last units on the right are going to be single families built on 1 acre plus lots.
And in your professional opinion, do you believe that the proposed subdivision can be accomplished consistent with the regulations of the underlying R2 district?
Yes, from zoning perspective, all the zoning, area and bulk requirements are met. There may be some saldo requirements that we need to get some relief, regarding some of the trees and just certain stormwater criteria where it conflicts with the MPDS and things like that, but that's more through the land development process that will be addressed.
And have you had a tree study done in that regard at this point?
We have had a tree study done.
And-
About every study done you can have out here, quite frankly.
And that would be more thoroughly reviewed during the land development process?
Yes.
Okay. And finally, section 240-38.5D addresses the need for conditional use where historic resources are subject of a subdivision. And obviously, you just went through what is proposed by way of a 5-lot subdivision here, is that correct?
Correct.
And again, you believe, subject to certain waivers that might be requested, that the proposed subdivision would be consistent with the underlying subdivision land development ordinance for the township.
I do.
Now, have you received a review by the township zoning officer, Mr. Brady, with regard to this application?
We did, yes.
Let me show you, it's been marked as applicant's exhibit A8. I'm not sure that this is part of the record, Mr. Thompson. So this is a letter dated January 10, just last week of 2024. Have you had a chance to take a look at this review letter from Mr. Brady?
Briefly, that's what we had discussed,
Right. And is it your understanding that Mr. Brady believes that his initial review comments from an earlier review have been satisfied by some plan revisions that have been made by your office?
Yes, yeah, we had revised a certain number of things to try to reuse the walls where we could, minimize any impact to the walls and that sort of thing, as advised by our historic consultant.
Now, one of the conditions he cites with his recommendation is that the existing historic barn would be sold as a primarily principal structure used for single-family dwelling. That's the proposal, correct?
That is the proposal.
And item number 2 is that the Spring House Foundation must be preserved to protect the historic history of the township. Now, we haven't mentioned the Spring House Foundation. Where is that on the property and what's the intention for that?
The spring house is on the right of the road going in, so it would be on the I believe it's lot 5, the property on the right. There's an existing, it's essentially the stone walls around the spring house. It's the headwaters of a little spring right there. And I think that would be up to the potential user if they wanted to try to put if they wanted to restore it, put a roof on it or what have you, but the stone foundation would remain. And it does still have an active spring in it.
Okay, so that would be the plan.
That would be the plan, yes.
And then finally, number 3 is that the existing stone walls would be preserved where possible, and the stone that is removed would be used in an appropriate area for a new stone wall.
Correct, yeah,
That's what's proposed and what you testified to.
yes. And the thought is, and again, that picture from that Mike had showed you earlier on, kind of showed you that it had basically fallen down. And there was stone there. We might be able to do a little boulder wall on the barn driveway leading up to it.
Now, you had mentioned that you'd reviewed, and we can talk about some of the general conditions of the conditional use. You reviewed the comprehensive plan. Do you believe that this project is consistent with the comprehensive plan of the township?
I do.
And in your professional opinion, would the project create any sort of adverse effect on public health, safety, or welfare? Or in terms of any fire, toxic hazards, or explosion hazards?
No.
And do you believe that the project is suitable for the surrounding neighborhood?
It's consistent, yes.
And you also believe that the project is suitable in terms of providing the logical, efficient, and economic extension of public services to the property?
Yeah, like I said, there's public sewer and water available.
And have you gotten any sort of, at this point, will serve letter from the water company provider? I think it's Aqua.
Yes,
That's been received?
I think that's been received, and I think the water, the sewer, there's been discussion with the Township Public Works. And I believe the mailer has been started, the process has been started, but that will be developed or that will be addressed during land development.
Okay. In your opinion, is there any practical concerns regarding traffic or the need to address traffic improvements arising from this proposed development?
No,
And based upon the design of the project as you presented it, do you believe that the project minimizes any negative impacts on historic resources on the property?
yes,
It minimizes it, okay.
it minimizes it. You know.
All right, that's all the questions I have of Mr. Kelly. The board has any questions?
What's the difference between the light green and the dark green in the diagram?
The dark green is the wooded areas that'll be preserved. And there are specimen trees around the existing house and the barn. Those will be preserved as well.
Good, thank you.
I have one additional question,
Sure.
which probably will be addressed in the land development phase.
Mhm.
But this is a watershed area, so I'm just wondering what the impact of building additional structures and additional road and cul-de-sac on the water flow and potential drainage.
Well, all stormwater management will be addressed through land development. It will be in compliance with the township code, but we also will have to go to the Chester County Conservation District and DEP to get what they call an NPDES permit, which further looks at the impacts of the pollutant runoff, the stormwater management, the erosion sediment control. So there's a lot of hoops to jump through and satisfy to demonstrate compliance with all those stormwater concerns. Sure.
Anybody else on the board have any questions? I wanted to ask, this is something that will be covered, I'm sure, in land development as well. The driveways, the main road off of Reservoir Road, are they going to be built to a specific standard such as a PennDOT standard? Or are these not going to be built to a PennDOT standard?
They're gonna be built to township standards,
Okay,
which might be a little bit different. PennDOT now has a
fine.
little different asphalt mixes and things like that. So it'd be built to township standards.
okay,
The road would most likely be offered for dedication to the township. Again, it's done to public road standards. I believe we are looking to reduce the width from, I think the township requires 22, we're gonna do 20 feet, just to reduce the impervious since it's such a low volume with only 5 units on it. But again, that will be addressed during land development.
Okay.
And then the driveways would again be done to township standards.
okay. Another question regarding, I know we'll cover it during when you're back again, but with stormwater management, are you going to be doing anything on each lot to prepare for, say, an addition that someone might want to do further down the road, or a pool house, for instance, or a garage, or anything like that?
Normally, what we do is we anticipate a certain amount, an allowance, if you will, 800 square feet, 500 square feet, 1,000 square feet of extra that's built into the stormwater management calcs. And then if they exceed that, they would have to do, go through the township and that sort of thing. Whether they will be done on individual lots will kind of boil down to how much we can handle. The basin is on the entrance on the left coming in, so that will handle the road and as many homes as we can get and as much water as we can direct that way. Everything is sloping to the south and draining to the south.
Right,
So there may be some need on the 2 new houses to have some sort of compensation, whether it's into little roof drain pits or something like that may be necessary.
okay. Yeah, I'm very concerned about a 100-year flood, for instance, with Reservoir Road, and we do have wetlands right there. So there's a lot of, and there's a creek. It's a big concern. So I just wanted to know if there was a plan to actually do stormwater on each parcel.
We've studied it. We had to do a phase 2 bog turtle, so we've
Of course you did.
evaluated it for that. Took months and months, but yes, we have all those studies prepared and have been submitted.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
That was all I had. Anybody else?
I just have one question. You talked about the walls and you talked about the walls as being historic resources. Exhibit A6, could you just identify some of the walls? Or I don't know if your historic consultant's going to talk further about that, but
Actually, the A7 might be the better indicator of where those walls are located,
That's the colored plan.
the colored plan.
Colors,
okay.
yeah, it shows just above the cul-de-sac or just north of the cul-de-sac, you can see those gray lines. Essentially, they are the retaining wall. And again, this is small, but if you were to look on the full set of plans, they are identified and they are labeled.
So they're gray lines just north of the proposed cul-de-sac.
Correct.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. My last witness would be Jane Dorchester.
Love children someday. Ready to play?
Jane, J-A-N-E, middle initial, Dorchester, D-O-R-C-H-A-S-T-E.
And Ms. Dorchester, thank you. What is your occupation?
I'm a historic preservation consultant, architectural historian.
And what professional degrees do you hold, including any professional affiliations related to that occupation?
I have a Master of Science in Historic Preservation from the University of Pennsylvania.
And you understand that this application involves a conditional use for proposed adaptive reuse and further development of a property that has historic resources associated with it?
Yes,
And what were you engaged to do with regard to this project?
to prepare a historic resource impact study.
And in fact, you did do that, correct?
I did?
And marked as applicant's exhibit A9 is a study which is originally dated July 21 of
Mhm.
last year,
Mhm.
was recently revised December 14 of last year. Is that
Correct. Uh-huh.
And if I just turn to the end of that report, that is your CV, Ms.
Correct.
Dorchester?
Correct.
Okay. And have you been accepted in other proceedings as an historic preservation consultant
I have,
to render an expert opinion in that regard?
yes.
I would offer Ms. Dorchester as such, Mr. Thompson, Madam Chair.
We've seen Jane Dorchester testify in historical resource issues.
No objection.
So we'll do
Thank
that.
you.
Now, can you describe, you've heard the description by Mr. Kelly and also by Mr. Zappatelli of the property, and
Mhm.
I take it that you've been out to the property and you're familiar with it?
Correct.
And can you take the board through what you were tasked to do and what assumptions you made and what conclusions you reached with regard to your assessment of the historic resources in the property?
Yes. First of all, the historic resource impact study, the purpose of it is to first of all identify if there are historic resources on the property, and then to identify what impacts, negative impacts, if any, the project would have on them. And then also to, if there are negative impacts, to then suggest mitigation measures to diminish or eliminate those impacts. So that's an impact study. And then, I'm sorry, what else?
And so then you had to identify any historic resources on the
Right,
property. So
so-
what did you identify as historic?
Okay,
resources?
so we identified using the township inventory list that is associated with your ordinance. We identified, actually, we ended up identifying 5, the house, the tenant house, the barn, and then the series of stone walls. And then we were aware that there was the Spring House Foundation, which technically would be a resource also. And then in identifying those, we then looked at what the impact would be on those properties, on those resources. And essentially, there's no impact on the tenant house or the house or the barn, other than that the proposal is to rehab it, and I'll get to that in a minute. Our main concern was with the stone walls, and that's because when you walk the property, it looks like the original farm walls then became extended at some point into what I would call landscaping retaining walls. So when you stand in the front of the house, it becomes clear that at some point there was formal landscaping in front of the house, and those stone walls that are what's left of that landscaping. So we became concerned about trying to preserve as much of those as possible. And in looking at the plans, we noticed that, in the original plans that we were shown, it looked like the driveway into the barn was going to knock out quite a bit of the stone wall, the old farm stone wall. And then the driveway into the house was also going to knock out some of the what I'm calling the landscaping retaining walls. So we suggested originally that they reorient the two driveways. And I'll get to that in a minute. Another thing that we're concerned about is trying to retain as much of the vegetation to act as a buffer between the existing historic resources and the new buildings in order to try to preserve the view shed from the house and the barn. So those were our concerns, and we suggested that the vegetation, the minimum, be taken out for construction. So we sent that report back to Vic, and they looked at it and they made some adjustments. So now they have the barn driveway. They reoriented that, so it's going through a portion of the stone wall. As Vic said, it's tumbling down. And then the proposal is to, once the driveway's been put in, they're going to take those stones and try to rebuild the wall to go up the driveway a little bit. And then, as he said, they've also moved the house driveway over a little bit more, so they're only going to take out a little bit of the retaining walls and then try to reuse them. And as for the vegetation, they're trying to keep as much of it as possible. They're getting rid of the invasive plants and the scrub brush, and those trees that have to be taken out for construction will be replaced according to the township ordinance. Did I answer the question?
You absolutely did. And and the goal is to mitigate any adverse impacts. In your professional opinion, with the adjustments that were made by Mr. Kelly to the site plans based upon your recommendations, you believe that the current plan adequately mitigates and preserves the historic integrity of those historic resources, and namely the walls, I think you're concerned about, in the best possible fashion.
Yeah, I think it does.
Okay. And you also see no problem with regard to the preservation of the Springhouse Foundation?
No, I mean, it's a foundation, and as long as it's not going to get knocked down, you're good. Good to go.
Okay. I have no further questions of Mr. Worcester.
Are there any questions here on the board? John, do you have any questions? Peter? I think that the only question I have is if there are any unexpected other artifacts, would it just be advisable that those are recovered and used on the property?
Yeah, I mean, it would depend on what you mean about
Stone walls.
Stone walls or foundation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say, if it's another, I'm coming up with the hypothetical. If you find the foundation of another spring house, and quite often farms did have more than one spring house, I would just say to treat it the way you're going to treat the one that's already there, that you know is there.
Okay.
With the stone walls, yeah, retain them as much as you can. If you really have to knock them down for construction, rebuild them. Even if you have to reconfigure them a little bit, just by rebuilding them, you're retaining as much of the historic integrity as you can.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's really all I had. Nobody else has any questions, Dave? Anybody else? No?
No.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's all the witnesses I have, and that would conclude my presentation. I would move my exhibits at this point.
So that's A1 through A9, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So moved.
We have 45 days to render a decision, Mark.
So yes, the board has 45 days to render a written decision. Unless there's something else that you want to hear from the public on the record, then we can close the hearing tonight.
Are there any questions of anybody in the room? Nobody was party to this on the Zoom platform or in the room, is my understanding. So I guess we don't have any questions then.
I mean, I guess the only
Yeah.
thing, this
Yeah.
isn't for a question on anybody in particular, it's just kind of a general statement, which is, so there's a regular assessment and a real estate value to this land, and then there's also the new residents that we would put on that land, as well as the transfer tax when those lands sell. Just something to consider as far as financial for the township. The assessed value of that land 2 years ago was $166,000.
$166,000
Yes,
was the assessed value.
total, yes, building its own land from Chester County.
Mhm.
And what year was that?
That was 2020.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I want to ask just Dwayne and Ernie, are codes and planning okay with this?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, yes.
And Madam Chair, if the board feels comfortable or so inclined, I know that they want to move forward with the land development project, and it would be nice if the board would feel comfortable making a verbal vote. I realize that the written decision wouldn't be available until at least 45 days, but at least they would have this closed.
Well, I would suggest that we review potential conditions at the next Board of Supervisors meeting. We have 2 meetings to render a written decision, so. But it's at the pleasure of the board.
Could we call for an executive session for just a moment?
We could.
Okay, let's call for an executive session. Can we just have about 5 minutes, please?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
No.
So I'm sorry that we needed to take that moment, but we needed to have the legal opinion of our solicitor regarding your request. So I would entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that we recommend the following conditions that are considered by the board. Numbered 1 through 3. I'll read them very quickly. The existing historic barn will be sold as a primary.
Oh.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep.
We can hand it to you too.
Yeah. The existing historic barn will be sold as a primary principal structure for use as a single-family dwelling. The springhouse foundation must be preserved to protect the historic history of the township. And thirdly, that the existing stone walls will be preserved where possible and the stone removed by use is an appropriate area for a new stone walls.
So Cody read the conditions, but just to be clear, this is for approval of the conditional use for the hearing tonight. And those are the conditions he read.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll second the motion. And I will point out that Exhibit 8 has those 3 things in if you have a problem.
Okay,
But
so
I would just, before we make
Please.
a vote, I would just ask the applicant if you have any questions or any issues with those conditions or set forth in Exhibit AA.
Applicant has no issues with those conditions.
Thank you.
are there any questions in the room? Are there any questions in the Zoom room? Seeing none, we'll call the question. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. No opposed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
for coming.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, stay going home.
You as well. Is the hearing closed, Denmark?
So the hearing's closed for tonight. Thank you.
Excellent. Just for tonight.
Okay.
Okay, so everybody is leaving for that particular issue. And as is up to the board chair to shuffle things, we're going to move on to, we'll come back to other business. We're going to move on to under new business number 10A and discuss the upcoming zoning hearing for 227 Baldwin Drive, the dimensional variance for pool installation. So shuffle your papers and
You can make a motion.
Madam Chair, thank you. I move that we recommend I recommend that we move forward with the variance for the Robbins in-grounds pool with a minimum of 2691-2 rear yard setback to the property line.
Well, I'll second the motion. I haven't even found it yet. You're.
here.
Can I just to clarify, is the board voting, is the motion to be in favor of the dimensional variance, correct? Not neutral, just in favor of as.
That we normally vote in favor of.
It depends. It varies. I mean, the planning commission voted to be in favor of it, so.
Yeah, I'm okay with voting in favor.
So, are there any questions regarding this application on the board? We saw everything in the packet. Are there any questions in the room? Are there any questions in the Zoom room? Seeing none, I'm going to call the question. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. No opposed. Thank you very much.
Okay.
All right, so we can go ahead back to other business. So let's jump back. If we have whiplash, we're gonna go back to the financial report.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
No problem, that's easy. Almost wish we had done that one first. Okay, so moving on. Financial report. There we go.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As of December 31st, now this is preliminary, mind you. We have to close the books probably in March after we have a review with our Malley, our auditor, which will make any corrections they recommend. But currently, as of December 31st, net of pass-throughs, the general fund had year-to-date revenues of $13,035,173 and expenses of $12,529,857 for a positive net result of $505,315. As of December 31st, the general fund balance is $6,454,666. We made our normal capital transfer in our sewer operating to sewer reserve transfers. Other than that, the December year-to-date revenue overall finished 6.2% or $750,000 over budget. And compared to the adopted budget, the shortfalls in real estate transfer tax collections and cable franchise fees were offset by EIT collections, interest income, our FEMA awards from 2021, interfund operating transfers, PNR classes and summer programs, building permit fees, and state pension aid. December year-to-date expenses are 5.3% or $127,000 over budget. Sewer stormwater repairs, engineering services and recharges, township building repairs, vehicle maintenance repair, and capital reserve transfers are driving the year-to-date expenses versus budget. The budget surplus of 2023 is projected to cover the higher WEGO costs budgeted in 2024 through a transfer as Thornberry Township no longer contracts with WEGO for policing services. Looking into the budget of 2024, $444,000 of the increase in revenue is a transfer for the WEGO expenses. Outside of that, we are really decreasing from this year to 2024, only $250,000 in net actual revenues. And we're looking at that in EIT, probably going down maybe 150,000, and in our fines and permits for 100,000. So pretty close to what we did this year. We're expecting next year. It's going to be a pretty tight budget, but overall speaking, I'd say that we should be in the ballpark, hoping that expenses don't go higher.
I want to make a comment here. The fourth paragraph, I'm not real comfortable with that. Budget surplus is perhaps necessary to use for the higher WEGO costs, but we have to bring those WEGO costs down. Because this is a one-year deal with the budget surplus. Those costs have to be lower from now on, or we're going to have to raise taxes again, and I'm not going to vote for that. So that's
In
just the point I wanted to make.
2025 or?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah, 2024,
The
we,
budget surplus isn't going to stretch to 2025, so
correct.
we have to do something about that. That's the only point I wanted to make. Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, John.
That's a good point. Okay, moving on to the approval of minutes.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we pass the minutes from the December 5th meeting.
Thank you.
Second motion.
Thank you. Did anybody see any changes that need to be made?
I really.
I did not. Okay, anybody have any questions regarding the minutes in the room or on the Zoom room? Seeing none, we'll call the question. Those in favor of passing the minutes?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. And on to the treasurer's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Treasury report is for the weeks December 28th, 2023 through January 11th, 2024. The Q4 Goshen Fire recharge, transfer tax receipts, EIT income, interest income, permit fees, real estate transfer tax collections, local service tax, and interest income drove our general fund expense, our revenues through this period. $813,000 was the year-end transfer to the capital reserve fund. General fund expenses included WEGO contributions, insurance payments, tree removal, equipment rental, and other routine operational expenses. Our capital reserve fund incurred $10,000 roughly for a replacement trailer. The end of the year transfer to sewer capital reserve was $410,000 from the sewer operating fund. The bond fund incurred $22,000 of expense for Milltown Dam engineering. And the infrastructure sustainability fund incurred $1,000 of expenses for Bowtree Pond, rehabilitation, engineering, and hauling. Any questions on those bills? And I've got additional things for the Milltown Dam. Cody, if you have questions. Or Bowtree Pond stuff, we've got, Eric, you can even pull it up if you want to see some of the detail.
I'll make a motion while we do that, Madam Chair. Move that we accept the receipts and approve the expenditures as presented in the expenditure register and to summarize the treasurer's report.
Second motion.
Thank you.
I had a quick question, Madam
Great.
Chair. Dave, the $1,000 expense, was that the extra bags that we ordered?
No, the bags are more expensive. That's some of the miscellaneous kind of items that the guys have to get just to pallets, hauling costs to take away some of the sludge and things that are left over.
And then, as you know, I was gonna ask about the Milltown Dam engineer. What did that include? What did we get out of that?
Yeah, let me look at the printouts that I did there.
Those were my questions too, Cody. So that's great.
Good. Let me finish on the boat tree. So the original budget for boat tree was $411,671. Hopefully, when I submitted the LSA grant for that, we submitted $176,000. We got that grant. So the projection now looks like about 344,000 roughly. We've spent 116,000 almost. So it looks like we have about 228,000 remaining. So out of the 344 that it looks like we're going to spend, we would get 176 back. You know, I'll take 50% plus if we can do that. The Milltown Dam charges, so far, there's a lot to this. So to unpack a little bit before we just talk about what we're spending right now, there was, you know, we mentioned red-bellied turtle surveys. There's lots of surveys that go into this stuff every time there's a engineering study. So the majority of a lot of these expenses are old. So we've got red-bellied turtle relocation, the Milltown Dam enhancements, the partial breach, the Clomer and FEMA review, and the additional Clomer. Those are all, you know, in excess of $400,000 that were years and years ago. We've got public works, rentals and equipment. Then we have the annual inspections we've done since 2016, which is between $3,000 and $3,500 each year. That was never budgeted for. It's just something we have to always do for the insurance, so that they know, since it's a high risk dam. And actually Eric Neese came out and did it personally for us on December 4th, to get it done ASAP so that we could actually get our insurance policy, January 1st, which was very nice. And they only went up $100, which was great. Engineering from Gammett Fleming to date on this entire project is $608,538. That's what we spent on engineering. It looks like, since we've changed gears and the board approved a scaled down version of this project, instead of a total project looking like $4.3 million. We're looking more at a $1.9 million total project, including construction. So that would save us almost $2.5 million. The savings in engineering looks like, from the original bond that we've put out, we would have maybe $600,000 left to do improvements
Which, thank you, which.
after we pay for insurance,
Which
for
we
all
talked about as the
engineering.
board. I guess it was last year, it was with two different members, about using some of that bond money for improvements down there.
Yeah, and I don't think I put that much in the capital improvements 5-year plan, because we're not sure yet, but yeah, we're getting a lot closer. And the contingencies that were put in there, it looks like, since Flyaway should be finished spring, it's gonna be a lot cheaper.
That's great to hear. That's good. All right, does anybody have any other questions about the bills? Are there any questions about the bills in the room or on the Zoom platform? Seeing none, we're gonna call the question. Those in favor of paying the bills? Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I am going to, as I am allowed to do, shuffle things around yet again. Anybody have whiplash yet? I'm gonna have the chief come up and give the emergency services report, if you don't mind, please. How are you tonight? Good, thank you. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. All right, how are the roads?
Better than I expected.
That's good to hear too. That's good.
What did you expect?
I didn't expect much.
In the afternoon, they were rather bad. But I think the diminished traffic and also the road crews were able to get ahead of it finally.
Good.
Because it was quite bad.
Well, thanks for coming tonight.
Your counterparts from West Town send their best regards.
Excellent.
I'd like to start this evening with a brief statistical report. There were 1,996 incidents investigated by the police department in the month of December for all three townships. Of that 1,996, 1,080 were in East Goshen. One of the things I think it creates some confusion is that we collect all data in our records management system since our transition in 2021. If I were to compare 2019 to 2023, there's a 93.5% increase in overall incidents. However, when you back out the proactive calls, the numbers are starting to return to what we saw in 2019 and prior. We're still a little ahead, but we're coming down to what our normal used to be. So that's very good news. I'd like to give a reminder to everybody that our website, our social media sites give everybody an opportunity to learn more about what's going on in the department and what's going on in your community. Particularly the labs feature is a mapping feature on our website that allows you to drill down and see what's happening where you work, where you live, to really zoom in and look at the incidents that are occurring where you care about. With regard to our charity events, I'd like to give an update to everyone. During October, November, and December, our officers participated in Bluebeards for Charity, which is a charitable event that allows officers to grow beards, carry pink badges and handcuffs, etc. The money raised goes to 4 charities in Chester County, and this year, each charity received $15,000. The good news is that we got some unexpected last-minute contributions, and this week we will be giving a $5,000 check to the Westchester Food Cupboard. With regard to our Toys for Tots and also our One Warm Coat, there was a higher need this year. Some of our connections said that there was a 27% increase in the needs of the community. And the good news is that everybody in the community rose to meet those needs. One of the stories that came back to us was from the Honeybrook Food Pantry, said that 1,600 toys were distributed to children and over 700 coats were distributed to the families in that area. To all of the community groups that partnered with us during these events, I want to say thank you and to say you made a real difference in our communities. So thank you very much. With regard to crime trends in East Goshen for December, I'm very happy to report that it was a relatively quiet month in East Goshen. There were 3 trends that I'd like to bring your attention to. The first one is frauds and scams. There were 13 frauds in East Goshen, and unfortunately, it was such a wide variety. I'm going to read some of them. Jury duty scams, dating scams, identity theft, computer repair scams, drug investigation and law enforcement scams, fraudulent pet sales, lottery scams, and grandparent scams. So if anybody wants more information about that, I'll be happy to provide it. The second trend was there was an unusually higher call volume for disturbances, disputes, domestics, et cetera, in December for East Goshen, but with the holidays, it's not that surprising. And lastly, there was an increase in theft and receiving stolen property investigations. There were 4 theft investigations and 1 receiving stolen property investigation, which involved a stolen car passing through the jurisdiction. There was no real trend to the thefts. Only one of them was a porch pirate in which a package was stolen. The other one involved people being allowed to come into the residence, either a family member or a caretaker or a cleaning service, and they committed a theft once they were inside. So we always remind people before you allow anybody to come into your house, know who's coming in your house. And I know it's terribly inconvenient, but do not allow anyone to be unattended in your house. It frequently ends poorly for the people. And the unusual crime trend that we had is that we had 3 missing adult investigations in the month of December. All of them were located. But it makes us a little nervous when the weather gets really cold because missing persons, the clock is much shorter to find the people. Are there any questions? First of all, from the board,
All the missing people were found.
all located. Good news.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Chief Bernard?
I have a quick question. Chief, good evening. Out of
Good
the
evening.
1996 calls from December, you said 1080 were from East Goshen. What was the amount for Westtown?
Westtown was 678 and 218 were from Thornbury.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any question for the chief? Chief, Barbara Emery is new
Pleased
with
to
us,
meet you.
and Peter Hicks.
Pleased to meet you too.
So this is.
I hope I have an opportunity to talk to both of you in the future.
So thanks. for
And
coming
I'm
today.
available should either of you need to meet with me.
Thank you so much for everything. We appreciate it. Be safe. Does anybody have any questions here in the room? Anybody on Zoom? Seeing none? We'll
Good
let you
evening.
go. Have a good night.
Drive safely.
Thanks for
everyone.
coming.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks for shuffling us in the way you did, and it worked
good.
out
It
really
worked out.
well, actually. All right, so we have already done the treasurer's report. We're back to old business. Okay, Derek, do you want to take?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So we had a couple of different things that came out after the ABC packet was done for the January 2nd meeting. And that is the fact that one of them was, and I'll address the other one in a minute on the next topic, but one of them was ESAC member, Environmental and Sustainability Advisory Council member. Brian Hutchinson resigned after I finished the reorganizational packet. So his seat is now vacant on the ESAC. I just want to wish Brian well. He was a good member and very intelligent and very committed to that council. So we wish him well going forward, but we now need to officially accept his resignation.
Madam Chair, I move that we accept the resignation of Brian Hutchinson from the ESAC, and thank you for your service, Brian.
Second the motion.
Thank you. Anybody on the board have any questions? There are none are there any questions in the room or on Zoom?
I just wanted to thanks to
ahead.
Brian. He was a good person to work with ESAC. He always was curious about where they were versus their budget, and he was on there for quite a while. It was a nice guy to work with.
Yeah, I had some things to say about him too. He's always been very thoughtful about things and very passionate about seeing how we could tie things in with the county. So I always appreciated his opinion and his enthusiasm. So thanks, Brian, for your service. And unfortunately, I'm going to call the question. Those in favor of accepting Brian's resignation, vote aye.
Aye.
Thank you all. Quick question. Do we know how many years he's served as a volunteer?
Off the top of my head, I do not.
Let's find out about that. Okay, thank you. All right, moving on. We've got ABC appointments. Why don't we go ahead and do that now?
Sure, thank you. So this is a item delayed from January 2nd on the appointments for all authorities, boards and commissions for 2024, or at least the vacant ones and the ones that were actually the positions that were up as far as the term. We did actually appoint the zoning hearing board on January 2nd. So that one is actually done, as I note in the sheet here for the applicants. And then the remaining ones are all listed there with the applicants listed. There were a few changes based on information I got since January 2nd that I've obtained, and people emailing me interested in different boards. So we did have Denise Royal and Natalie Golden have submitted their applications for ESAC and have been added to the list. That was a couple of weeks ago, right after that. And then Reese Corso had submitted her application to be an ESAC youth advisor. And then we sadly received a word from his daughter that Pipeline Task Force member Paul Kersavage passed away after Thanksgiving. So, very sad for Paul and his family. Unfortunately, that did add another vacancy for the Pipeline Task Force. And then we did get 3 more applicants last week for the ESAC, and that is I did not have a chance to add it to the public packet because I received it a little late, but the names are Anthony Natali, Kimberly Schaefer, and Keenan Flanagan, or Ken Flanagan for short.
Mhm.
So those are the three additional names that aren't in the public packet. So this is for the board's discussion and appointments.
Okay. So we have the complete list in front of us regarding some of the appointments. I don't know if the board is ready to vote on the planning commission appointment or not, appointments or not. I also don't know if we can really vote on the ESAC because there are so many applicants that we need to actually interview. So what would you like to do? We have an opportunity that we can approve, we can go through and appoint the open position on the municipal authority. Conservancy Board has one incumbent and there's no application for the second opening at this time. Park and Rec, we have two open positions. We have two people who are currently serving that we could reappoint. Pipeline Task Force, they have a lot of positions right now that are open, but we could appoint that incumbent as well. Maybe the youth advisors could be considered for the ESAC and the pension committee. Oh, and the vacancy board.
Just,
So-
and just to clarify, there's, right now in the ESAC, there's one youth advisor. Natalie Golden is the other
Right,
high school student, but she applied for a
Right.
full position, just.
Right.
Do we need motions for this or?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I would,
how are we gonna do that?
you can,
motion,
you
please?
can do it a number of different ways. I mean, the ones that I'm hearing from this discussion that have no challenges to it is Municipal Authority, Conservancy Board, Parks and Recreation, Pipeline Task Force, and the Pension Committee, and the Vacancy Board, which I did not have on there on January 2nd. That was an oversight
Right.
by me, which you need to appoint. I did not have a discussion with the board, so I didn't have a name for that. I
Okay,
didn't ask anybody. So you could make a consolidated motion to appoint those and then handle the planning commission and ESAC differently. Mark, would
Okay.
that suffice? Something like that?
okay,
Well, then I'll move to,
microphone.
I'm sorry.
But you would, I would say that you need a discussion for the vacancy board because there's no name on there.
Okay, so let's go ahead and discuss the vacancy hearing board. So so that you all know, the vacancy hearing board consists of one person. And so it's really a board appointment. That person serves only as a tiebreaker in the event one of us should leave a position. And in the past, we've asked that the person consider the political party of the person who's vacating the position. And we would ask that of the next person as well. Has anybody got, do you have any names that you'd like to float? John?
Sean Ellsworth.
Sean Ellsworth, okay.
I would second that motion only if we can get confirmation from him, like you said, that whatever political party of the representative who steps down or is no longer on the board is.
I did
fulfilled
have
with that.
confirmation of
Okay.
that. Yeah,
I would take that as a friendly amendment.
yeah, absolutely. We need to make sure that we honor that. I think that that's important. So, so we've had a motion then for Sean Ellsworth to be our vacancy board appointee, and we've had a second.
Yeah, second that.
Thank you. Yeah, you already seconded.
Okay,
Thank
yeah,
you. And are there any questions on the board regarding this appointment? Are there any questions in the room or on the Zoom platform? Seeing none, then we'll call the question for the appointment of the vacancy hearing board. Sean Ellsworth in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Barbara, did you vote? Or did you abstain? That's fine. Thank you. Okay.
And then going back to the original way I was discussing it, Madam Chair, looks like Municipal Authority, Conservancy Board, Parks and Recreation, Pipeline Task Force, and Pension Committee have no challenging seats. So I would say you can make a blanket motion to appoint the names under those positions, under those.
Well, I'll make that motion. I move to reappoint the members of the Municipal Authority, Conservation Board, Parks and Rec, Pipeline Task Force, and the Pension Committee.
Thank you. Do you have a second?
Second.
Thank you. And are there any questions, any discussion on the board regarding these appointments?
Just about conservancy, Madam Chair. We have an applicant or no application currently for the second position.
Correct.
Sandy we had someone who visited our conservancy meeting last Wednesday.
Okay.
She is a former climatologist and she's interested in participating. So she's setting up a call with
Hmm.
Sandy to see what that looks like.
Fantastic.
So we may be seeing an
Fantastic.
application in the future for that.
That's great.
Okay, well, that's
Good to hear.
good news.
Are there, so we have a question. It looks like Jerry has a question on the Zoom platform. Hi, Jerry.
Hi, it's Jerry. All right,
Hi,
my
Jerry.
question is, currently the pipeline task force is supposed to be staffed with 7. And we're never going to achieve 7. And based upon a discussion with Derek, I'm fine with reducing the full complement to 5 from 7. Does that need to be approved by the Board of Supervisors?
Yeah, it definitely does, Jerry. I had a discussion with the board. I think everybody's in favor of it. I just have to formally get the resolution in front of the board at the next meeting and be able to do that officially. But we are aware of it, and I think everybody's on board to take care of it and do it and reduce it to 5, because I agree with you. It's been operating as a 5-member board anyway for quite some time.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
Do you have any other questions or concerns, Jerry?
No, I do not.
Thank you. All right, so is there anybody else with a question?
Hmm.
All right, those in favor of appointing the incumbents for Municipal Authority, Conservancy, Park and Rec, Pipeline, and Pension Committee, aye.
Hi,
Are there any opposed? Any abstain? No, Barbara, did you vote? You voted yes. Thank you very much. Okay. So I'm not sure if I'm abstaining from the vote on the Planning Commission. I don't know if you're prepared to make that vote tonight or if you want to make that another night. Are you all okay? Do you want to come on up? Oh, it's a little irregular, but come on, yeah, come on up.
Good evening, Ernie Harkness. I'm Chair of the Planning Commission.
Hi, Ernie.
How you doing? I think we have 2 vacancies, and I know one, I believe, is Dan Daly, who's an incumbent, been there for years. We have 7 on the commission. We need 4 for majority. And I know with 2 openings, we won't be able to make the majority for the next meeting. And I know there's some individuals who are traveling, so I don't know if there's an issue with Dan, with Dan Daly. I know you have the other 2 that are new, so you can do what you want. My suggestion is maybe we can get 1 and you guys can decide what you want to do. That's all.
Go, do you want to postpone the meeting?
If we have 4, we'll make the meeting. I'm just saying, it just runs us thin. That's all I'm saying. And there's no need to do it tonight. I just want to make you aware of that. That's all.
Okay.
Thank you, Ernie.
All right, thank you, Ernie. All right, so do we have a motion for the Planning Commission positions?
I'll make the motion. I move that we appoint Dan Daly, the incumbent, and Dan Truitt, the new person to the Planning Commission.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you. And are there any questions in the room?
You note that you're abstaining.
I'm going to note it again. Are there any questions in the Zoom room regarding these appointments? Again, I'm abstaining because I know one of those applicants, so I'm going to refrain from voting. I will call the question though. Those in favor of appointing Dan Daly and Dan Truitt?
Aye.
Thank you.
4-0.
Okay, and microphone, please. Thank you so much.
I'd like to make a motion that we nominate, go ahead and elect the two incumbents to ESAC, just as we did not interview Dan Daly on the planning commission, that we interview the new applications for the two open positions, but go ahead and approve the incumbents, just as we have done with the rest of the commissions, the committees.
I'll second that.
Okay, and we're just talking about incumbents then?
Just incumbents. And then
Buckle up.
do the interviews that we had planned and use those to fill the remaining two positions.
Okay, is there any discussion on the board regarding these appointments? John, do you have anything to say?
I'm ready to vote.
Okay, are there any questions in the room or any questions in the Zoom room? See none, voting on the incumbents for the ESAC, yea or nay?
Aye.
Those in favor,
Aye.
aye. Nay,
Nay,
okay. I would prefer that we at least interview people. There were a lot of applicants. There are, in fact, were there 4 or 5 adult applicants? 4?
vote.
No, I'm sorry. Five.
5 applicants for 5 adults for 4 open positions. So those are 5 additional people. So I would like to see us at least consider those applicants.
There's a question on Zoom.
Okay? And is that Mary?
Says
you
Mary's
vote?
iPhone.
Yes, yes, this is Mary McCluskey. I
Did you vote?
currently am an incumbent on ESAC.
Yes.
I wanted to
Yes,
just
Mary, go
make yes, hello, everyone. I just wanted to make a comment that this is unprecedented to shut out 2 incumbents who are not only founding members, but began your social media campaign, also launched the very, very successful expos for the township. And also at the last meeting, as is customary, in the past, the vote was taken. And for some reason, you decided to put it on pause. And after that meeting, in fact, weeks after, suddenly resumes came in. And so without any conversation with the existing members of this committee, we really and truly are perplexed. And any future volunteer for an ABC in East Goshen is watching this. So I really would like you to give second thought to respecting those who have contributed over 6 years of their time. I find it very disrespectful that you are behaving this way, and I would hope that you might rethink it. I know that you're trying to be courteous to those people who have stepped up, but in fairness, over 6 years, we've always had open meetings to the public. I think we've maybe had 3 visitors at any one given time. I do not see any of these names as people who have ever visited one of our meetings or ever contacted a member of ESAC. So I would like you to revisit Barbara Emery's suggestion, as well as Cody Bright's, and please reconsider this, because as incumbents, a little respect to the volunteerism in this township would be extremely wise. That's all I'd like to say.
Thank you for your comments. Mary, I'm going to respond to that and tell you that I asked the new board members specifically if they wanted to delay these appointments so that they could be involved in the process. And that was really what it was for, so that they could be involved in the process.
And
They're part
yet,
of the
you would like to consider people who never volunteered before and never sent in their resume until after that motion. So I'm calling it for what it is, and I really think you should reconsider.
Thank you for your
It's just-
comments. I was trying to tell you
I think
that.
that it's, well, I do think it's strange that all of this is happening because we successfully passed a resolution for a plastic ordinance. It feels like retribution, Michelle, and I'm putting it out there for all to hear that this is how you're operating.
That's,
Any more of this?
it's absolutely not retribution on my part. People don't like the approach that was taken with the plastics ordinance. It was.
Then why
divisive.
didn't they come to a meeting?
Why
They've
don't you
been
let me
open.
talk? Why don't you let
They're
me talk?
open meetings. Every month it's an open meeting, Michelle, and you know that. In fact, you didn't even come to a meeting. Nor did
No.
John Herzog.
The reason I voted no was because of the lecturing that I had to listen to from the members of the ESAC on meeting after meeting. I'm tired of being lectured. And I'm
Then
not
why
going to
didn't you
stand.
ever attend? How come you never attended a meeting? In fact, John, I don't
Why
even
should
think
I?
you attended you didn't even
Why
come to
should
the
I? You are
expo.
an advisory
Because
group.
you are
And we're the
elected,
board
John.
of supervisors.
should
You are
show up.
supposed to advise us, not,
And we did.
not lecture us.
I don't think that's what happened, John. But
I think it is.
now it's on record. Now the township knows how you operate. You never
operate
came
right
to a
out
meeting,
front.
John. Oh, and John, guess what? I think you just wanted to say that you defund the police. Didn't you just say that let's cut the cost of WeGo? Really?
I said, let's cut the budget because Thornbury is not part of the jurisdiction now. And we can't afford to pay the full amount
Okay.
that we paid when Thornbury was. So I don't feel like being questioned like this. Why don't you come into one of our meetings and we'll go at it, you and I?
Okay, I think that that's enough. I was trying to respond to you. I'm not going to continue my response because you keep interrupting me. So if anybody else has any questions in the Zoom room, we'll go ahead and move forward. Anybody else in the room? Okay. You can come up to the mic. Yeah. Thank you. Just so they can hear on the Zoom.
David Shuey, East Goshen. I didn't hear Peter's vote, so you voted against the motion to appoint the incumbent ESAC members.
That's correct.
Is that correct? Okay. I just wanted to clarify that. And I'd like to just maybe comment on the fact that the single-use plastic was a divisive process, a word that was used here. That ordinance was researched heavily by the ESAC. Nobody was lecturing anybody. They were presenting an ordinance for your consideration. And they respectfully listened to the fact that you didn't want enforcement in the ordinance. They took that out. Then you said that you didn't want it to be an ordinance, you wanted it to be a resolution. They agreed to that. And that was voted on. There was nothing divisive about it.
They agreed that they're an advisory group, David, and you know it.
They agreed to
don't
make,
agree
they
with
agreed to
us.
make the changes. They brought a draft to you. They agreed to make the changes that you recommended.
No,
There was
they
nothing divisive about it, except for
recommended-
you, John.
We recommended Michelle's resolution and you voted against it. And the other resolution was voted.
That's, I mean, yeah, I mean, that's, that's what happened.
if-
But there was nothing divisive about that. The ESAC had done all that work and brought a resolution for you to consider. And, you know, if a board member took it upon themselves to write a resolution, the rest of the board considered that and decided not to consider it in the board meeting. That's not divisive.
No, that wasn't divisive, but the response from the residents was, you were in the room at the same time, and there were residents that were here.
And let me,
Were angry about the fact
and let
that
me let me say that John doesn't want to be lectured to. But
And
one
here
of
comes
the,
lecture.
but one of the candidates for ESAC is Ken Flanagan, who stood up here and lectured everybody in this room, including the board.
Yeah,
So don't tell me you don't want to be lectured to, because you were. That's all I have to say.
okay, where were we? We had taken a vote. There were two guests, there were three now, and that's where we are. We have youth advisors. Do we want to interview them or do we want to appoint them at this time?
I'm okay with appointing them since they're not voting members.
Okay, so we had a discussion about the youth advisors, the youth that have made application to the ESAC. We would like to encourage community involvement with those students. And we also understand that they have commitments to their to furthering their education. And so rather than take the position of putting them in a voting position on that ESAC council, the board talked about the possibility of appointing them as youth advisors with no voting capability, but full participation. That way they have the flexibility when they do go to school, whether it's local or far away, to still remain part of that organization. So is there a motion to appoint Reese Corso and Natalie Golden to the ESAC as youth advisors?
Madam Chair, I'll make the motion for Natalie Golden and Reese Corso's appointment to the board as non-voting members, youth
Thank you.
members.
Thank you. Is there a second?
That's right.
Thank you. All right, are there any questions on the board regarding these two appointments? Are there any questions in the room regarding these appointments?
Does that expand that number of positions or is that,
They're non-voting members.
so it's not part of like the number of regular members?
No.
Okay, just curious.
Yeah, that it won't affect their quorum or anything like that. Are there any questions in the Zoom room regarding this? Okay, so Mary Kruger,
Can I just ask, so the plan now is you will interview I think it's 6, maybe it's 5 adults to decide who gets the 4 positions?
6 people and 4 positions.
6 people.
And we are actually speaking specifically to the youth. The
Right,
youth
right, I know
advisor.
that. I'm done, I'm talking the plan going forward to fill the remaining positions, because we still can't do anything, right? We can't meet, we can't do anything until this is done, so I'm just
You
wondering.
And that's something, we're not discussing that at this time. I'm sorry. We're talking specifically about the youth advisors for this committee. And we're talking about their appointment. We will circle back and make sure that there's a clear path forward for ESAC. Are there any other questions regarding the youth appointments for the ESAC? Mary McCluskey's hand is up and I don't know if she's questioning this or not.
No. Let's see.
No, I will remove it.
Okay, thank you. So those in favor of appointing the youth advisors of Natalie Golden and Reese Corso,
Aye.
say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. All right. So as far as the path moving forward, there's no reason why ESAC can't meet. They just can't make any votes on any financial is it just financial issues they can't vote on?
No.
Until we,
No voting.
no voting.
I talked to Mark about this. It's a quorum for the seated members, correct? So right now, they're not considered seated members. I mean, that was your legal opinion on that, right?
That's mine.
Okay,
Okay, but they can meet, is that correct?
yes,
They can meet and have
Yes.
discussion.
yes.
Okay. All right. Moving on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we are at pipeline ordinance, carbon dioxide and blue hydrogen. We actually had this discussion back in November, and it was not in draft form for the, essentially, the pipeline task force worked a great deal on this, a language for carbon dioxide pipelines. Hydrogen pipelines are becoming more and more a part of the energy industry, so I wrote a memo to that effect, as I did back in November. So this was suggested language for an ordinance in order to safeguard East Goshen further. Back in November, we just essentially had some articles, bullet points. I worked with Mark to get it into a draft form. So, I mean, it's up to the board. I know it's been a long night. I don't know if you need to go into an in-depth discussion, but I at least wanted to get it to you in a draft form so that it's then easier to edit and take a look at and see what we want to change, how we want to do it. So,
Point, Derek, page 1, twice the word ordinance is totally misspelled.
Yes.
Sure.
Yep.
okay. And just to be clear, I don't have a motion on the table tonight,
Right.
but it is up for discussion.
Well,
for
I
the
think
board
that we need
choose.
to discuss some of these things, and we do have pipeline task force people here to help us along with it. In for dime, in for dollar at this point. I would actually like to I would like to have a little bit of discussion on the setbacks. My concern is that a half-mile setback, it seems to me that that could be argued as being too much.
Yeah, I mean, we did have that discussion at the November meeting. Mark and I had talked about it at length, probably more than any other aspect of this ordinance. So when you look at the township and the square miles of the township and you look at that setback, it can be probably determined if you're looking at, how this holds up in Port of Wall or something like that. It could be looked upon unfavorably, given that it is a pretty large setback. So out of any aspect of this ordinance that is a discussion point, we may want to have, what is the right number? I don't know the answer to that, but it is something we may want to take a look at, because I think our council does have concerns on that language as well.
I mean, I know that the half mile is in there for a reason. I get that. And I know that in the next paragraph, number 2, under B, I know that the 3/4 mile is also in there for a reason.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think some of this is based off of, when you look at Midwestern areas with a little bit more
Right.
space out there, it's a lot different than the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic corridor. So, again, I don't have a great answer for it right this second, but I think it is something we need to take a look at.
All right, well, what was the recommendation
So-
of the pipeline task force?
was it this?
I think Judy's here, Jerry's online.
Jerry's on.
Yeah, Jerry's about to.
Would-
Go ahead, Jerry.
Oh, good.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Jerry. Is he there?
I'm asking him to unmute.
Sorry.
You good? I think he's good now.
Okay, am I
Thank you.
unmuted
Yep.
now?
Yep.
Yeah,
yep,
you
you're
are.
good.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Okay, those numbers are a conservative recommendation. And by conservative, we went large. You understand what I mean by that?
Yes.
It, in the research that was done, we found that it is very difficult to model a carbon dioxide leak from a pipeline. It is dependent upon terrain and weather conditions at the time. So it's tough to come up with a number that has, let's say, scientific studies behind it or actual experience. So we took the route of picking a number, that is large. And I understand your concerns about that. And that is up to you if you want to change that number. But we do need something in there. There needs to be a number. I would recommend not going to the extreme in the other direction. Like something like 50 feet is far too small.
No,
For
I agree.
pipe-
I agree.
Right, for pipelines, if they come to East Goshen Township with the pressure that they will be running, and if there is any kind of leak whatsoever, that carbon dioxide is going to go a long ways. Yeah, how long is it going to go? I can't predict that. And people who are a lot more versed in this say they can't predict it either. It's difficult to model. Okay, so we struggled with this. And like I said, we came up with a conservative number, and that's what we put in there.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. I appreciate that. I'm just my biggest concern is this going to be something that you can defend?
Well, any setback, any regulation that the township is gonna put in its ordinance is rationally related to, whatever you're trying to protect.
Right.
Right, so in this case, and that's also in the context of when you look at an ordinance that could potentially, given the fact that these setbacks are so great, eliminate the availability for that use at all in the township. If you have a setback from structure half a mile and an additional setback of 3/4 of a mile for other structures, it may be that this ordinance wouldn't permit these types of pipelines on Scotia Township. Because of the way the township's developed, it may be that case.
Could Mark speak into the microphone?
Oh, sorry, Jerry. He'll say that again.
So, I mean, in the zoning context, if you're gonna essentially, enact a regulation that excludes any type of use, especially uses that may or may not be regulated by the federal government or the state government, then we need to make sure that we've got, a rational basis for those setbacks compared to other setbacks for other types of pipelines. So that's the concern I have.
The problem is, this isn't like any other pipeline.
Yeah.
That's
And
exactly
that's-
correct.
That's
Carbon
that's
dioxide
crux of the
pipelines
problem.
are very unique, and carbon dioxide is a very unique substance. It has interesting, for lack of a better word, physical properties that make it a safety concern.
I just wonder if there's maybe a number that doesn't sound as awful. Instead of being 2,640 feet, can we go to 2,500 feet? And can we go from 3,960 to like 3,600 feet? I'm looking for a way to try to make it sound like it's not as egregious as
Is
a
it based,
pipeline.
is it based
company
on
would-
particular scientific?
Yes,
Study.
that's the problem. This is based on what is known of this particular pipeline at this time. And if a leak were to occur. So I mean, it has validity
Mhm.
in being what it is. The problem is, will a pipeline company come through? Will a company come through and say, this is egregious?
Well, probably would either way, but.
Hi, Judy.
Hi, Judy DeFonso, East Goshen Township. I was actually the one who suggested the half a mile setback. And let's just say I put my blinders on, did not look at the township, but I looked at safety and the safety of our residents. And this was an assumption of a pipeline similar to the pipeline that's happened, accident that happened in, can't always forget the name of the town in Mississippi, but you know which one I'm talking about. And in reading one article, and there was a group of gentlemen coming back from a fishing trip. They were approximately, or they're just under half a mile from the leak, and their car stalled. And when they got out of the car, they were overcome by the carbon dioxide. And I'm just thinking, if we want to keep our residents safe, that that half a mile is a reasonable number as far as safety is concerned.
Okay.
And if you want to change it, I mean, I think it still kind of has to be pretty big because we want to keep our residents
Mhm.
safe. And
That's not the question, though. The question isn't, of course, we want to keep people safe.
Yeah.
But the concern we've had all along is whether or not we can maintain this if we're taken to a court of law. And that's why we throw it at Mark all the time. 3/4 of a mile and a half a mile are probably right for safety.
Yeah.
But the question is, if a judge or a jury looks at it, what are they going to say about those distances? Will they uphold it, or will they say it's too big?
And we want something that can be defended and can stand up to an inquiry like that. So.
it's a balancing act, in other words.
Exactly. So would it be possible, you know, I'm not ever gonna say safety aside, but would it be possible, is 2,500 feet also enough? Is 3,600, 3,700 feet enough? Would it sound less?
In all honesty, because there are so few carbon dioxide pipelines, and
You know,
I think only one has failed.
right.
We don't have data. So we're kind of using one data point on which to base this. Now, it's very possible that this car was driving through a low-lying area and the wind was coming from the pipeline towards the area, and they kind of had bad luck, in plain English, and that's the reason why their car sold and they were overcome.
We couldn't possibly know if that's the case, but.
Right, exactly. We don't know,
Right.
but we're unfortunately don't have a whole lot of data to base it on because it's just the one incident.
Right.
And I mean, I would love if anyone could contribute something that's empirically valid.
Right.
And again, with one data point, you really don't have anything that's
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you for your work on this.
Yeah, you and Jerry and the rest of the crew.
All of you really have worked a
Well,
lot on this. and-
Again, we want to keep the residents
Yeah,
safe, and that
so we-
was the focus of what we picked. Now, we also, I was assuming more of a supercritical, 100% carbon dioxide containing pipeline. Obviously, if the concentration was a little lower, it's going to be a different product than what was in the Mississippi pipeline. But we don't know what's going to happen down the road either.
Right.
I mean, that magic 8-ball just doesn't work for pipelines.
Very frustrating.
Judy, was that Satartia? Does
Yes.
that sound right? Okay.
Okay,
Can I make a quick comment that might be helpful?
Yeah.
I was the liaison to the pipeline task force while this was being developed, so I'll speak as a resident. All likelihood, the Mach 2 project will be when the carbon dioxide pipes are coming through the township. They've already announced publicly that they most likely will use existing easements. Energy Transfer Partner is part of the Mach 2 group. So think about where those pipelines are right now. And if you do, like you suggested, Michelle, 2,500 feet, you'd be in pretty good shape. So if that's a defendable distance, you're still capturing, because if you think where those pipelines are, Bow Tree,
yeah,
Boot Road, I mean, if you hit 2,500 feet, you're probably
we should
hitting
be
all
okay.
the populated high risk areas. So
We don't have anything along Westchester Pike. Do we? Does
um,
anybody know? We don't have any pipelines along Westchester Pike, do we? Route 3? I don't think we do.
and I said existing easements will probably be the energy
There's,
transfer.
I don't think are there existing easements on Route 3? No, it's too bad Dwayne's gone.
Well, I told you, David, last time we met that I would vote for this, but the idea is to be able to discourage
Yeah.
them to use a pipeline rather than focus. It is a safety issue, but we're trying to establish something that we can defend legally.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, I think the $2,500, yeah, 2,500 feet.
Where they are,
Yeah, and even with the other number, the 3/4 mile, I think that that could actually, we could probably say 3,800 feet. It's not an arbitrary number, maybe to us, but it might be less, it might be easier to defend. And then the other thing that we have to consider is topography, and I'd like to know if we do have easements along Route 3, then we have to look at the topography of Route 3, because there are some low-lying areas along Route 3, especially down in Milltown. And then we have to make a different, maybe we'd have to have another paragraph to take into consider the topography of the township in low-lying areas, and make it maybe a half a mile, 3/4 of a mile, like.
So-
So I'd like to see a little bit more information regarding easements where we have existing easements that haven't been exercised. And I also would like to get in here, in number 2, it has all these various places enumerated, but I think it also needs to state that we have to consider high consequence areas where there are large concentrations of people. Because, I mean, the park is not a large concentration, but we have a lot of events down at our park where we have a lot of people in the summertime in particular. So I want to get high consequence areas in there as well.
You mean as like a catch-all term?
Yeah, no, well, in addition to this, just like as for a catch-all term, in addition to all of these things. And maybe even give an example. I don't know, I'm just, it's still kind of ruminating in my head right now.
Well,
But-
look,
but
we
that's
don't have
my
to
thought.
ruminate here.
No,
Think
no, no.
about it. We're
Does
not
anybody else
voting.
have anything else to add to this? And I see that Ginny has her hand raised, and Jerry does too. So maybe we can have Ginny's input first real quick. Hold on.
I asked her on mute.
If you're on mute, check and make sure you're not on mute, Ginny.
I think
Okay,
I lost her.
is she
Jerry.
gone?
Yeah. it looks
Okay.
like Jerry's
Jerry?
good.
Jerry's good. He doesn't need anything else. Okay.
No, Jerry's good.
Oh, good. Go ahead.
Hello. Yeah,
ahead.
You're good,
to
Jerry,
answer
go ahead.
To answer Michelle's question, the pipelines cross Route 3, they don't run along Route 3. The easements go across that road, but not along that road,
Okay.
okay?
That's a good answer. I got one for you. If we have a break in the pipeline and they cross Route 3, where do you think that break will come?
Oh,
I wish I knew.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
the truth, isn't it?
But with our luck, it will be Route 3.
All right. Are there any other?
Looks like Ginny's back.
Yeah,
Is Ginny back?
so,
Yeah, go ahead, Jerry.
okay, if you want to change those numbers down from 2640 to 2500 and 3960 to 3800, I have no objection to that. I would then, though strike the wording in the parentheses, because it won't be it won't be half of a mile, it'd be 47% of a mile. So just take that out. We picked those numbers because they were half a mile equals that many feet, 3/4 of a mile equals that many feet. If you just want to
But you
use
see-
the feet, fine. I'm okay with that.
Do you know why? I mean, I think it would be more easily to something that could be defended. I don't want them to know that it's a half a mile. I don't want it to feel like 3/4 of a mile, that's too much. I'd rather them have to figure it out.
Okay. And I did have, I did have one other comment. Can I make it
Yeah,
now?
go ahead. Yeah,
Okay, so, if you go to the very first part where it says section 1, the section of the East Goshen Township Code of Ordinances hereby added to the pipeline saturation ordinance. So it looks like this ordinance, the carbon dioxide pipeline ordinance, is being linked to the pipeline saturation ordinance. Am I correct in that statement?
I think for draft purposes it was, Jerry, but I think we discussed to make it a standalone ordinance, in the
Yes,
pipeline task. Force. So, yeah, we can,
Right,
we
one
can
of
take.
our yes, one of our recommendations was to make this ordinance, which covers carbon dioxide pipelines, independent of any other ordinance in the township, including pipeline saturation or any other ordinance. And the thinking behind that is as follows. Let's say, for example, the pipeline saturation ordinance was challenged in a court of law and was overturned. It's my understanding that by default, if the carbon dioxide ordinance is linked to that saturation ordinance, then the carbon dioxide ordinance is overturned also. Is that true?
Yep.
Potentially, I mean, we were just looking for somewhere to put it in the code, and then that is the only section that dealt with pipelines. We can try to find somewhere else to put it.
okay.
All right, so you're all right with that? Our recommendation is to have them completely separated, no linkages, in case there are court rulings that are, not what we're hoping for. It doesn't kill all the ordinances, it just damages the one.
Right.
To put it bluntly. Maybe a
Okay.
poor choice of words, but anyway.
But that's kind of what it is. Thank you very much, Jerry.
Okay.
Ginny is back. Ginny, would you like to ask a question or make a comment?
Yes, can you guys hear me now?
We can.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. I've switched to my phone. I was unable to
No worries.
unmute. Okay, so first of all, I want to thank East Goshen for being a leader in this, and also the excellent work that your pipeline task force has done. These CO2 pipelines, as you've been hearing, are a real concern for public safety, not only in what happens when they leak, but also the very fact that by their nature, they make these pipelines more susceptible to leaks. So this is really important what you guys are doing. I really just want to chime in on the high consequence area that Michelle brought up. It's an important point that, so I live in West Whiteland Township. We are also a high consequence area. It's all the more reason for as generous a setback as you think is defensible. You could go with these setbacks in more rural areas that are big. You can just think of how many more people within those within that radius that you would have in East Goshen. So that's really what I wanted to say. And also that it's my hope that after East Goshen passes this, that my township and others, particularly those in the Mariner East corridor, will follow suit and join forces with you and follow your lead. So thank you all. This is really fantastic to hear you doing this.
Thank you, Ginny. And please be in touch if there's anything else that pops. I always appreciate your input.
Okay, thank you all.
so much. Judy is coming back up.
I don't know if I'm being nitpicky with this, but I noticed that it's CO superscript 2, where really should be CO subscript 2. And I'm hoping that that isn't some kind of a loophole that would prevent,
Good catch.
let's just say, well, I did pass organic chemistry when I took it in college, and it's been quite a while, and I'm glad that I remember this sort of stuff. But I don't want that to be some kind of a loophole that somebody takes advantage of.
Of course, CO2, it should be a subscript. It's not the one above, it's the one below.
It's hard to get in Word, I think.
It is hard to put in Word. Thank you.
Let's just say I babble Word all the time. I understand how this works. I think I use the big 2.
And that would be acceptable as well.
So if I,
Is there-
oh, just go ahead.
Go ahead. Are there any other questions on the board or no? Okay, go ahead.
The only thing I was gonna say is Mark and I can take some of the suggestions from here and redo some of this, but I think we talk about enough stuff where I'd like to email the board so you can kind of give me feedback via email individually.
Okay.
Just to kind of condense everyone's thoughts in a nice cohesive manner, and then we can kind of
Great.
redraft what we were looking at tonight.
Great, thank you. We'll move on to B, bid results and possible acceptance for triaxle dump trucks, fuel and soda ash.
Madam,
Go ahead.
sorry, please.
No, I was just gonna say, these are the bids that we did not get bids for originally in December, so we had to go out again, and we
Bid.
were successful this time.
Okay,
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we recommend the following companies for the tri-axle dump trucks: RW Fetters Inc. and Di Stefano Landscaping Services Inc. RW Fetters is at $100 per hour and Di Stefano at $110. I'd also like to recommend Fuel Riggins Inc. for the amount of $27,000. $27,067. And then also like to make the recommendation that we use Soda Ash Main Pool and Chemical Company in the amount of $54,688.
thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All right, is there any discussion on this? Any questions for anybody, or Dave, do you want to?
I got a quick question for Derek. So when we go for the triaxle dump trucks, is primarily for the highway stuff?
Yes.
Okay, so doing road stuff, do you know if that's approved to have 2 when we went out to bid?
Yeah.
Did we ask
so-
for,
Yeah, because the one's a backup in case people.
but
don't
we
have the
put that in the
equipment.
bid documents because I know we got hit with the state liquid fuels. from
Correct,
PA.
yeah, no,
Okay.
it's all
Awesome.
together.
Thanks.
All right, are there any questions on the board? We're in the room regarding this bid. We're on Zoom. Seeing none, I'm going to call the question. Those in favor of the motion that Cody gave us? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, and we need to appoint an at-large police commissioner for WeGo.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make the motion that we make Tom Stone our at-large police commissioner.
Second that motion.
Thank you. Tom Stone is a resident of Thornbury Township, and he's qualified as a retired police chief. Traditionally, it's been a Thornbury Township supervisor, but with Thornbury no longer being a customer of WeGo, we are moving forward with a different option. Does anybody in the room have any questions about the appointment of Tom Stone, or anybody in the Zoom room? Seeing none, I'm going to call the question. Those in favor of Tom Stone being appointed? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Aye. We appreciate Tom's willingness to stand up for that position. Derek, do you want to talk about the standing issues?
So they are actually, they're both moving along pretty well, Madam Chair. I'd like to wait until the next meeting because I was supposed to do a little catching up today, but the weather had different ideas. In order to give a better report on the standing issues, I'll withhold till next meeting.
Okay. Milltown Dam update
Those were the 2 standing issues that I was referring
and
to.
Bowtree Pond. We
Yep.
kind of already had a little bit of an update
Yeah, I
anyway
mean,
with the
yeah,
financial
they're
report.
both moving along.
So I mean, I think that we kind of covered them anyway, so. Any other matter with the board? Are there any public comments here in the room? Come on up, please. Thank you. And then we'll get to the Zoom room.
Good evening, board. My name is Carl Milkowski. I live on 1608 Highland Avenue, East Goshen. We've been there since 2017, my family and I. We love where we live. We however, concerned with the speeding, and I don't think that's a issue that only I have issues with, but I think our street is unique in the fact that we, A, have a park entrance, B, we have no sidewalks, we have no double lines, so it's not a through street, and lastly, we already have 2 existing speed bumps in the middle of our street that are very effective. So what our request is to add 2 more speed bumps as well as some signage to slow some people down on our street.
What street is this again?
Highland Avenue, and my friend Eric here lives on Taylor Avenue.
Mm,
It's on the back side of the park.
Yeah, you guys are in my precinct. Good.
So, it was always an issue. It's gotten worse, and Eric could speak to this. Since we installed the lights at the park, people are cutting through our street to get 352 to Paoli, so it's kind of like a cut through. So instead of going, if you're coming down 352, you don't have to go all the way around, stop at all the lights, they cut through our street. And we're not a through street. So my wife originally called the township. I understand there's some hesitation as to putting in more speed bumps for whatever reason. That was in 2020. We added more signage. The signage did not help. So our logical next step in the spectrum or the continuum of things is to add more speed bumps, I believe. I also asked Derek in November to add some signage, some speed signs, some traffic counting, all those things. I love it. The more the merrier. I think it's very cost effective. I think it's a drop in the bucket. We have our whole street on board. One person who's not here today, they're in Disney World, has started a petition. He's got like 90% of the residents on the street signed. So with spring around the corner, kids running around, dogs running around, we just want to slow people down on our street. So we're asking the board, Eric, if you have anything else to say, you can go ahead, to help us out.
Okay, why don't we hear from Eric? Hi, how are you?
Hi, good. I'm Eric Shepsky. Actually, I don't live on Highland Avenue. I actually live on the adjacent road, Taylor Avenue. So that's kind of one of the first roads that cars use to cut through from Paoli to 352. Probably the biggest concern is obviously safety. I've lived there 10 years now, and we're probably one of the youngest when we moved in. And it's turned over a lot from a lot of older families into younger families. To where when we moved in, there are hardly any kids in the neighborhood. Now we have just on that section from Carl's Highland section to my section of Taylor, 13 kids that are elementary school age and younger. We have more who are in high school as well as middle school. And there's also a lot of foot traffic coming from further back in the neighborhood using Highland to get down to the park, which I know Carl said earlier is the only park entrance from Taylor or Highland. So there is a lot of foot traffic, and we have there's a lot of times I'm walking my kids home from the bus stop, and we just have cars kind of flying down these roads a lot of times. So yeah, we're here out of concerns for safety, not just of our kids, but certainly for the other folks who are
Specifically,
looking for-
it's the speeding that you're concerned with.
Yeah, I would say speed. Well, I would say speeding in addition to the number of cars that are coming through. I mean, not just that new traffic light that's been put there at the park, but there's also, in addition to that, the new safety crosswalk where, it's not a, traditional traffic light. It's just used whenever pedestrians are trying to cross from the north side of Paoli over to the Applebrook side of Paoli. So, just between the traffic light and the new safety light section, that's adding to people saying, hey, I want to cut this out and go cut down through our neighborhood.
If I can add, in fact, if you put it into Google Maps takes you down our street, and we're not a through street. So if we had some signage maybe on Paoli Pike or N352 saying this is not, do not turn if you're not local traffic only, something like that.
Okay.
Because most of the speeders that we're concerned with isn't local traffic, it's.
Okay. Yeah, so there are a few options. I think that, so what we have done, I know in the past with some speeders, with some speeding issues, we've had the traffic safety unit come out to do a study. But that's one option. What are the other options?
They did a study a few months ago on Cornwallis Drive. I watched them do it, so they can do that.
Talking about the police.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've spoken with Carl a number of times on this issue. I would disagree with going to the police on this one. The reason for it being is usually the police go out, they do, what they have to do for the quote unquote study. And then they just kind of give out the, what they think would be best. Usually it's more enforcement. It's, signage as far as electric traffic signs flashing the speed. For this specific area and this specific ask, because they've done their homework. They know kind of exactly what they want and what's there now is the speed bump. I personally would feel more comfortable getting input from a traffic engineer that I would work through with our township. I understand that part. But I don't think the police study is going to give you anything that we can implement that what their residents are asking for. That's just my.
Okay, can we start with a police study?
Sure.
Because that option, we know that we can request it and it's not gonna be an added cost. We know that we can go to the engineer next.
Mhm.
It's not to say that that's the end of it, but just to at least do our due diligence by having the police come down and at least start addressing the issue.
Well, what's better is
think?
if they find people are speeding and then the police sit there and give
Yeah.
a couple tickets
Well,
out.
enforcement, enhanced enforcement is definitely a component of it, for sure. But in order to implement speed bumps or anything like that, it
Yeah,
would
that's gonna
eventually
be
have to go to
engineer.
a traffic engineer anyway.
Right,
If I may add one more thing.
Yeah.
Board, please.
Mhm.
I think in order to save time or money, there is a very interesting thing done by West Goshen Township. I don't know if we have contacts there. Jacqueline Drive had the same issue where people were cutting from 202 to New Street. And they installed a bunch of speed bumps, put a bunch of flashing red and blue lights, and it's very effective if anybody's driven down that way. If we have any friends at West Goshen that could maybe even just see what they did, how they established that that was a good idea, and like how effective is it? That would be great, because
Yeah, I mean,
it went from a highway to now people are moving along at 20 miles an hour down Jacqueline Drive,
I can
right
ask,
next door to us.
I can ask Christine how much it costs them.
Well,
to do that.
I don't, the money component aside, I'd want
Yeah,
to
I'm
talk
just
to
saying.
the boots on the ground as far as who, I know West Goshen a little bit. I would be shocked if they went forward with that without input from an engineer or anything like that, but
Right.
I can talk to people in Public Works and see how they went about it.
Okay,
But then
Um,
I can talk to the police as well.
Cody or Barbara, do you have any questions? Suggestions?
Just thanks for coming in, and sorry you had to wait 2.5 hours to say that.
Thank you for what you guys do. This is impressive what you guys do here.
Do you have any, Pete, do you have any questions? No. Oh, John's throwing stamps at everybody. There we go. Thank you so much for coming in and making us aware of this issue. And we'll start working on it immediately.
Thanks.
That's. we will
Thanks so
start
much.
looking
If I
in-
can ask, can we be put on the schedule for next month? We have other residents that would also love to come.
Oh, you mean to come back?
Yes.
That's something that Derek would be the one to,
Yeah, I mean, I could put it on the agenda.
Use the card I gave you.
Yeah.
And, that's the general,
the general phone number.
phone number and, you can use that, to get a hold of Terry too.
Yeah,
Great.
absolutely, yes.
Thanks so much. Have a good evening.
Sorry you had to wait so long. Thank you for being patient. Okay. Is there any other public comment? And do we have any liaison reports? Liaison reports, correspondence? Cody?
Yes,
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion.
Oh,
No,
wait.
Derek, hurry up,
Sorry,
hurry
I
up,
do
hurry up,
have
hurry up.
correspondence. I'm sorry.
Ahead.
So sorry, Madam Chair. So I did receive correspondence from 3 board members requesting specific participation in township insurance plans, and I just need to cite this legally. I need to make this distinction in public. So for the dental plan, I did have a correspondence from Barbara Emery and John Herzog requesting participation in our dental plan only. And then I did have a request from Supervisor Peter Hicks for participation in our healthcare and dental plans. And this is allowed by section 606C1 of the second class township code. And this submission and this announcement in public does satisfy the requirements for participation of a board member. And this will be reflected in the minutes as well. And that is it.
Okay, thank you very much. And Cody, you're up.
I'd like to make the motion to adjourn. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Second.
All right, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank
Good
you for
to sign
coming.
anything.